I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast with a stone thrown, because this week we watched Charmed Circle.
Written by Jeremy Burnham and Trevor Ray.
Directed by Peter Graham Scott.
And aired on February 7th, 1977.
Of all the episodes, this is the one with the most confusing title, because this is the one where they're like, damn, we really need something related to a circle. We really need something related to this. There was even a perfect title in this episode. Someone said something, not Charmed Circle, but like, they said something circle, and I was like, damn, that would have been a way better title for this episode, but now I can't remember what it was because I didn't write it down. Damn.
Well, I didn't find any reason why it was called Charmed Circle, and I didn't care enough to think of one, so...
To make one up.
Yeah, exactly.
On the topic of making things up, Keon found a website with some, quote, background info.
Oh, we'll get there. I'm going
to
drop some of that info near the end when we discuss some people who were involved on the, or people who were part of the crew of this show.
Yeah, well, I'm just setting people up for the fact that it sounds, like you said, and like I agree, made up.
Well, that's what you get when you try and uncover Children of the Stone's behind the scenes / not backstory, behind the scenes information / making of information, is you get these random forum and blog posts. And, flashback to episode 1 of this season, we tried to pick and choose the ones that seemed the most reputable or that were corroborated by online interviews that were supposedly done with Jeremy Burnham and Trevor Ray, and not include some of the more wild ones that you find out there. But again, there's very little confirmed, I think, about the making of this show.
Because who the hell knows anything about this show?
Because who the hell, it's 2019, soon to be 2020. Who...
It'll be 2020. Yeah, it'll be deep into 2020 when this goes out.
Yeah. Who at this point cares about Children of the Stones? I mean, I do. I do to some extent. I'll say it this week. This is the first week I'm actually comfortable with saying it, is that I'm enjoying this more than Star Cops. And I probably by the end I'm going to say I like this more than Star Cops.
I miss Star Cops. Bring back Divas and Kenzie, Nathan, David.
Well, unlike with...
And I guess Anna.
Weirdly enough, both Children of the Stones and Star Cops have stuff made for them this decade. Pretty recently.
Do you mean this decade when this airs? This decade or this decade when we're recording this decade?
I'm not going to speak in future terms.
Why not?
Just for the listeners.
You should.
No. Well, I'm not going to. Anyway, this episode starts with, as every episode has done except episode 1, a recap of what happened last time, which is that Di died.
Or did he?
It's a little up in the air in this one, actually. And, Adam confirms his death as he does in the last episode. And then he barges into Hendrik's house, which I guess is just the closest house to the site of Di's death. And he asks to use the phone to call the police.
Yeah, one of my notes is Di is still dead. And then 3 notes later is Di might not be dead.
Well, I think I found out who Link is.
Link is the butler.
Link is the butler. Yeah.
Link is the butler.
And this guy, just a little preemptive info for you, that we're going to get into later. This guy has more acting credits than anyone else on this show. Yeah.
He's also the most incidental character so far, besides the kids in the classroom.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, even Mrs. Clegg has a little bit more to her than Link. But Hendrik shows up, and he says 2 things. One is a little obtuse and a little cryptic. He says there's no escaping destiny. And the second thing
Mission
he says
to destiny.
is a little less obtuse and a little more sketchy, which is that he tells Adam not to call the police.
He's like, just show me the body. You can trust me. So Adam's like, all right, let's go see the body.
Well, part of his reasoning is that he's like, you confirmed that Di is dead, right? And Adam's like, yeah, he's for sure dead. And he's like, well, then don't call the police. There's no need to call them. What could they possibly do? He's already dead.
They could find out who did it.
Why it happened?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Exactly.
But they go back to Dai's body, and he's returned into stone. Because if you remember back to episode 4, it looked like Dai had turned into stone, but then we saw that he had actually died and not turned into stone. But now he's stone again? Question mark.
Yeah. Adam decides to steal the pendant pieces from the crime scene, just contaminating the crime scene, just contaminating the crime scene. But
as Hendrik decreed, they're not calling the cops. Like they end up not calling the cops.
That's okay. Just blame it all on Hendrik. Just be like, Hendrik was the guy who murdered him. That's why he didn't want me to call the cops. Pretty sure any jury would convict on that evidence. Rock solid, you might say.
Well, I read that in Ireland, and this is possibly in the UK as well, because I'm not sure about this. This is just conjecture, but this might be a remnant of like the colonialization of Ireland. In Ireland right now, there's 3 like verdicts in their court system. There's like guilty, not guilty, and like not enough information to decide either way.
Well, there actually is like when you're doing a plea in the United States, there is actually a third option between pleading guilty and innocent, and that's now the term is actually, I think, either Latin or Italian, but what it translates to is basically no contest, which basically means you're saying that you're not going to admit that you're guilty, but you'll accept some punishment. Basically, you're basically saying that like you think that if it went to trial, there may or may not be enough evidence to convict you, but you're not willing to take the chance, but you're also not willing to admit that you're guilty,
Very
essentially.
Complicated stance.
I mean, it's basically like you don't want to admit you're innocent. It's basically I don't want to go to trial response, essentially. Like, that's basically what it is.
Huh, that's weird.
I mean, there's more legal intricacies to that, but there is a third option in the United States judicial system as well, I guess is my point.
Yeah. It's just weird to me that like in Ireland of all places, it's not their like system isn't like built on the basis of like innocent until proven guilty. I almost said guilty until proven innocent. It's just based on like there's possible that like you would just have not enough evidence. Like you have to prove like the whole thing is that in the United States, like supposedly right on paper type thing is like you have to prove guilt and not innocence. Whereas like in Ireland, it's like you have to prove both guilt and innocence at the same time. No, I don't know.
There was an article recently and that was posted to Reddit where it was like, today I learned the FBI like extensively investigated Michael Jackson and like said there wasn't enough evidence. Like they couldn't say that he was guilty of like child molestation. And then there was a huge argument in the comments because they're like, well, why didn't the FBI say he was innocent? Clearly there's something there. And then people are like, you fool. Literally in America, you're innocent until proven guilty. They don't have to prove he's innocent. Like if they say he's not guilty, then like that means he's innocent. And just this hilarious argument back and forth. Classic.
Anyway, back in the underground lab of the museum, Sandra and Matthew and Margaret find out that there is a stone on the stone chart that isn't in the painting, and there's a stone in the painting that isn't in the chart.
Yeah, so Margaret makes this leap of faith where she's like, what if they're the same stone, just in different positions? And you're like, but that wouldn't be my first guess. My first guess would have been like the stone in the painting got destroyed and someone replaced it and put it in the wrong place. Not that the exact same stone that got moved.
Well, or maybe buried, because they did have that tradition of burying the stones.
Also true.
But that's what her sort of guess is. Meanwhile, back at Hendrik's house, Hendrik and Link are having a very suspicious discussion. Hendrik alludes to the fact that there are 4 who haven't yet enjoyed his hospitality.
And then he says, the sooner we're one big happy family, the better. It was like,
Link just emotionlessly is like, yes, sir.
And then he introduces sexism into the Children of the Stones universe by going, but we have to stay in the regular order. The women have to go first.
So, I don't know, like, if this was just me misinterpreting or mishearing things, but like, did you hear, because I mean, I think this was just a case of like, I just misheard it, but like Hendrik says something about how he has a brother or something like that? And yeah, that's all I got. He just mentions his brother or something. And I think it's in this scene. But anyway, another thing that they find out in the museum is that the fragments that Adam picked up, like complete the amulet with the fragments found by the barber surgeon.
And then as soon as Matt touches it, he starts getting a vision, and he starts just saying these random words that I wrote down, all of them. He says, visitor, beginning, end, visitor, bright shining circle, people, village, priest, stones, power, beam, always.
Yeah, so you don't even have to watch this series. Just jump on board with this episode and you get that little plot recap there.
Anyway, now Adam makes his own leap of faith where he's like, yes, bright shining visitor.
And then there's
Visitor bright
Actually-
shining. Must mean guest star.
Yeah, I forget what he explains the whole concept of the guest star, but I forget what it was. It was
Okay,
like it was
so
related to the supernova.
This is really weird because I looked this up to see if it was a real term. So first off, Adam's like, so a guest star, that's just what they used to call supernova. And then
yeah,
Margaret's
that's what it
like,
was.
oh yeah, Hendrix supernova. Anyway, so I looked it up because I'd never heard this term before, and I found out that weirdly enough, guest star is actually not an English term. It's not an Irish. It's not even like an American or European term. It's actually a Chinese term from Chinese astronomers. Apparently, Chinese astronomers had 3 terms for like stars that, or things that look like stars but weren't there permanently. So guest stars, which modern astronomers now pretty much believe was referring to supernova, and then something like a trailing star, which is a comet, and then like a blinking star or something, which was something else I don't remember. But
Planet or something.
it's kind of weird that that Adam like jumps to this Chinese term because through my research I couldn't find any mention of it being used in like Mayan or Roman or even English or
British.
European astronomy, except as a translation of this Chinese term from Chinese astronomers, from early Chinese astronomers.
Maybe it has something to do with the ley lines, like distributing power and terminology over. I don't know. I mean, that's.
Or
just a
maybe
guess.
it's some sort of implying some sort of like link between the circle and somewhere else on the world, or that it's aliens who like landed in multiple places in the world. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, and I mean, I actually don't. Like, I don't remember.
So anyway.
Right. Anyway, Matthew and Sandra go back to the sanctuary for some reason. I guess just to see if there are any clues about Dai's death.
And no, they find nothing.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah, I guess they don't.
Because I have no notes about this.
Yeah, I just wrote that they go back to the sanctuary for some reason. But meanwhile, Adam actually reconfronts Hendrik. He, like, very passive-aggressively asks Hendrik, he's like, what does the amulet have to do with the supernova, Hendrik? Like, explain that one.
Hendrik's
Hendrik's like,
what?
what the like, I don't freaking know. Like,
Why do they have to have anything to do with each other? So,
and they go back to the site of Dai's death. And they're like, he's just not here anymore. Dai just isn't here. And we forgot to mention that throughout all of this, they're alluding to the dinner that Hendrik is hosting at his house tonight, where she's just invited Margaret and Sandra. He's neglected to invite Adam and Matt. Jerk.
well, then we get
Yeah, speaking of food and dinner.
the most amazing food item ever concocted on television to date. Matt asks Sandra if she'd like a sandwich. And he pulls out 2 pieces of bread and he's like, what would you like on it? Here, let me make it for you. And he goes, let me put on some ham, mayonnaise. I'm like, all right, okay, so far so good. Mint jelly. Hang on, what? And then he's like, and apple crumble. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, you know, as much as this show is like, I think a show that can be enjoyed by all ages, there are those things of like, it's for kids. Like, look, he eats these weird and quirky foods. Like, isn't it so funny?
I think even kids would be like, what? You find me a kid who's willing to try a ham, mayonnaise, mint jelly, and apple crumble sandwich.
I'll try. I'm not a kid, but I'll try it. Why not?
All right, season finale for this season. 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks. You have to acquire some mint jelly.
I know, yeah. This is going to be like my quest for custard that I went on a year ago, and I just couldn't find it and had to import it from the UK.
I'm a vegetarian, so I'm going to have to opt out of this taste test. But I eagerly await your results. You can taste it live on the show. You can make it live on the show, in fact.
Well, you can just have it without the ham, which... Actually, now that I say that, it honestly sounds more sickening without the ham.
I was gonna say.
Because, like, without the ham, the taste of the mayonnaise would just come through even more.
Yes, through the subtle undertones of the mint jelly. Okay, I found some mint jelly on Amazon for $8.
I'm sure I can get it at like World Market or whatever it's called. The only like way to get custard here is to buy a custard-filled donut and scrape it out of the donut. That's the only way.
You could make custard.
Yeah, that's what I ended up doing.
Probably a lot more effort than it's worth. I mean, I wouldn't recommend trying to make mint jelly for one sandwich. This jar of mint jelly says it's perfect for entertaining.
Yeah. You can juggle it. You can play golf with it. Anyway, back to the story at hand. Adam has some suspicions and some theories about Dr. Lyle. Adam thinks that Dr. Lyle never even left the circle to begin with.
Right.
And this is a bit of a stretch, but he tells Margaret that he thinks that Lyle actually went to Hendrik's house and that something at Hendrik's house is what's turning the people into happy people. Essentially.
Possibility. There's an interesting line here that I thought was also implying something suspicious about Hendrik, because his butler is like... Well, he's like, women are always late. This is Hendrik. He's like, women are always late. They're never punctual. And then his butler's just like, something about, a benefit to living the celibate lifestyle. So, and he's like, yes, that's true. But I do have my kids. And the butler's like, so you have the best of both worlds. And I'm like, wait, how? What?
Yeah, he has the children of the stones. Finally, he has become the children of the stones.
Finally, he has become the Superman 4, the quest for peace.
Anyway, just as Sandra and Margaret are about to head off to Hendrik's house, Matthew steals Sandra's scarf so he can do some psychometry on it and spy on Hendrik.
Yeah, and I guess Adam's just like bought into this theory fully because he's like, good thinking, Matt.
Turns out at the end of the series, Matt was just like, I was just kidding. I can't do psychometry. I was just
making that up.
No, but it works. So they get to Hendrik's house, and he invites them into like a creepy-looking throne/dining room.
Yeah, this is like Fred 2-esque. That's coming out soon on Triple Play. Where he goes into the teacher's house and he's got this weird secret room and he's just like, this is just where I prepare my meat. This is just my meat preparing room. And you're like, yeah, right.
That's when he's carving up human bodies.
That's like what's going on here. He's like, this is just my dining room. This is just where I eat dining room with this giant stone table with this stone throne.
Yeah, well, it's a stone circle. It's a stone, table in the shape of a circle, which is interesting to say the least.
He's like, this is a clumsy shape for a table.
Another thing we get about Hendrik's house is that he has a digital clock, which I guess in 77 is a bit of a rarity, especially in rural England.
It's important somehow, but we don't find out why in this episode.
No, we don't. So did you have the did you have the thought of like what the heck are they eating? Like, you can kind of make out what it is, but I was like, is that
I
is
just
that a
assume
ham and mayonnaise, mint jelly, and apple crumble sandwich? Like, what is that?
yum, yum, yum. See, going back to that, the mint jelly and apple crumble combined doesn't sound too bad. It's the
Yeah, it
mayonnaise and
does.
it's two separate sandwiches combined into one. It's the ham and mayonnaise and the mint jelly apple
Well, who
crumble.
would? Okay, yeah, I'll agree with you for the sake of argument here. The mint jelly and the apple crumble doesn't sound that bad together, but like a mint jelly apple crumble sandwich, like between two pieces of bread, that doesn't sound very good.
You know what else doesn't sound good? A bread sandwich. But you know what else is tasty? A bread sandwich.
Not really. Bread sandwich isn't that good. Toast sandwich is, and it's the texture that makes it good.
What's the difference? Do you just toast the bread in the middle?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, bread isn't the same thing as toast. They're two totally different food items. Not totally. I mean, they're related in some way, obviously.
I mean, that's like saying fried chicken isn't still chicken. You know, it's still chicken.
Exactly.
It's toast is still bread. Toast is still bread, just like how fried chicken. Yeah, but it's still, the fried chicken is still chicken, just like how toast is still bread.
It's not. Tell that to McDonald's.
Okay, McDonald's fried chicken is like chicken leftovers.
I mean KFC, not McDonald's. What the heck am I saying?
It's still chicken.
Well, KFC chicken is actually white slime. So, white slime is. If you see,
this is a food podcast.
yeah,
now.
if you see a product like or an ingredient called mechanically separated chicken in whatever it is you happen to be eating, it's a product called white slime. White slime is once they like mechanically separate all the like quote unquote good cuts of meat from the chicken, they just throw the carcass in a blender, blend it up, and that's mechanically separated chicken.
Good thing I'm a vegetarian.
You just have to like not be in that headspace. Just don't think about it when you're eating it. So don't think about the poisons you're putting in your body.
Every time I see someone eating KFC now, I'm like, "Hey, how'd you like that white slime?" And they'll be like, "What's white slime?" And I'm like,
What you just ate.
you know when you get the good parts of the chicken? Yeah, so they take the rest of the chicken and just blend it up, and that's what you're eating right now. Anyway, Matt gets some more words. Impossible to move, energy, force, changing, and then
okay here. Let's not skip Hendrix's sick, amazing skylight that he has in his dining room, which is so useful and so good at what it's meant to do that it lets in a giant beam of light in the dead of night.
Okay, did you see this beam of light and go, wow, that is the worst special effect on this entire television show? It's literally just like someone took an expo marker, a silver expo marker, and drew on the film frame.
Look, it looks fine, okay?
It doesn't.
Well, this is actually, I mean, maybe it's done the same way as the animation in Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet's this sci-fi movie that came out in the 50s, and a lot of the special effects in the movie are done by Disney Animation, and I think the way they did it, I didn't look this up, but I imagine the way they did it is that they got the actual frames and just did their animation over them, which is how they combined some of the live action stuff with the animated
That's how they did Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, so imagine that's how they did it there. I don't know how they did it here, but it looks fine. It looks fine. Hendrik has a line. Hendrik says it's time to complete the circle, which is what prompts this beam of light. And obviously, it's meant to look like the beam of light from the painting. So, or at least it has some relationship to that.
Yeah, if the beam of light in the painting was drawn by an expo marker.
So Matthew is seeing all this happen, and he says that string of words, which you mentioned. But let's not forget the two first words in the string of words, which are two words that, when put together, don't sound very good. Which are power and white. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine if they had put them in the other order?
Oh, God.
He just says that, and Adam goes, "Ooh, Matt, I'm gonna have to disown you. That's it's not okay."
And that's the end of this episode.
Nice.
So big cliffhanger here. possibly to make up for the cliffhanger that we got at the end of episode 3.
Which one was that?
It was the one where Jimmo and his father had decided to join the cult.
Good old Jimmo. Best line in the series is still Matt going, "It's Jimmo!"
Actually, I think we're going to get the best line in the series when we get to our quote section in a minute. But first, we have to get to our crew and cast section because there are surprisingly people we still haven't touched on yet.
It is surprising.
So I had a few. Hold on, let me just pull out my notes for it. So we get yet another one of Britain's 10 actors in this episode. We get John Woodnutt playing Link. Now, as I mentioned before, this guy has been in more stuff than anyone else on this show, including Ian Cuthbertson. He was in basically all the typical stuff a British person is in. He's in Avengers. He was in Out of the Unknown, which is, again, sort of like the British version of the Twilight Zone, as far as I know. He was in Coronation Street, Zed Cars, Emmerdale. He was a few roles in Doctor Who. He played the Duke of Forgill in Terror of the Zygons. He played George Hibbert in Spearhead from Space. He played Sauron in The Keeper from Traken. And he played the Draconian Emperor in Frontier in Space, actually.
Damn, I totally forgot the Draconians were even a race of beings. I totally forgot Frontier in Space, where half the episode was them running around this just generic office building.
It looked cool. Like, it looked like a cool industrial complex, not like a lame one.
It looked like a generic office building.
He was in a show called Crown Court, which I just mentioned because it ran for like 12 years. I don't really know what it is. And he was in the bill. And I wanted to also include some crew members here. We have someone named Dr. Peter Williams, who's credited on the show as technical advisor. I could find absolutely nothing about this man. Absolutely nothing except a single line from a single site. A site called h2g2.com. So according to this site, quote, a scientific consultant, Dr. Peter Williams, was hired, and the details concerning the fictional history of Milbury perfectly match the real village of Avebury where the series is set, unquote. Now, let me just read another line from this same exact 2014 blog post from h2g2.com on what they have to say about Avebury. Specifically the sanctuary. So this is what I was alluding to. This is actually what you were alluding to before. That seems totally fabricated and made up. So H2G2.com goes on to say the sanctuary scene in The Children of the Stones is actually the West Kennet Long Barrow, built around 3700 BC. The real sanctuary was a double stone circle at the top of Overton Hill, 1.5 miles from Avebury, at the end of the avenue. Avebury, too, has the body of a barber surgeon on display who is believed to have died in the 1320s when burying a stone. His believed profession was identified as he carried one of the earliest surviving pairs of scissors in Britain. And the entire blog post is just full of stuff like that, full of stuff that that is written as if it was just completely true and undeniable sourced fact, but once you read it, it just seems totally made up.
Well, I did just look up Avebury, and it is apparently an actual town.
Yeah, it's where they filmed the series in the summer of '76, supposedly. It is an actual town with a stone circle. I just am very skeptical at the claim that Milbury perfectly matches the history of Avebury.
What, you're skeptical that this is not real life history?
It's not real footage from Avebury? I want my money back. I want the money I didn't even spend on this series back. I want this series deserves to pay me.
Yeah, well, that sounds incredibly made up.
The National Trust, who demolished many of the buildings in the circle in the 1950s, owns the Avebury Stone Circle. Like, that seems totally just made up and fabricated. The remains of a small post office and the Red Lion pub in the village, the same pub seen in the television series. Oh, their remains. Okay. I was going to say it's not even a sentence. In reality, the Church of St. James In reality, the Church of St. James, the Alexander Keller Museum, and Averbury Manor are located just outside the stone circle. More claims from this site, so I don't know. I don't know. And then we also have Ken Jones, who's credited as designer. IMDb and basically the rest of the internet knows this man as Kenneth Jones. And it looks like he's done design work for a bunch of other kids miniseries that are sort of in the same vein as Children of the Stones, probably mostly from ITV, because ITV made a ton of these things apparently.
Great. Thanks, ITV. The real heroes.
Yeah.
I actually recognize the Kenneth Jones name. I don't know where from. Maybe I'm conflating it with someone else.
Yeah, he's done like 20 things according to IMDb.
I did look up the oldest pair of scissors in the UK and found multiple sites that claimed someone named Hinchcliffe should be credited for inventing the modern scissors because he was the first to use forged steel to forge basically modern scissors in the 1700s. So,
well, considering this site says that this guy was unearthed with scissors in the 1320s.
Well, I just find a lot of evidence that, like, scissors, depending on how loose your definition is, existed back to ancient Roman times, but, like, the modern idea of scissors, like, should be credited to this guy in the 1700s.
Huh. Well, I actually had a quote from this episode.
Wow, I didn't.
Potentially...
Oh, wait, yes, I did.
Well, when Matthew first has his first little string of words... Adam goes, he's trying to decipher it, and he goes, visitor, somebody visiting. And that was just an amazing line to me. Honestly, a little reminiscent of the line on Doctor Who in like the first 3 minutes of Dragonfire where this guy goes, freeze us? You mean we're going to be frozen?
Dragonfire, another episode I totally forgot happened. Well, my quote is Hendrik just going, is it too late to buy you a drink? And then... Adam going, thanks, but no. And at first I thought he just said no. And I was like, oh, Hendrix is buying Adam.
Not too late to buy me a drink.
I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But then they like didn't go get drinks. So I had to like scroll back. Like, thanks, but no. And I'm like, oh, damn. Thought Hendrix was trying to seduce Adam by buying him a drink or something. I don't know.
Hendrick, yeah. And I guess that leads us into our costumes of the 70s section, which this episode...
Didn't we have...
I had one. It was one where we'd actually seen this costume before, but I don't think we mentioned it. It's Matthew, again, wearing a shirt that looks way too small for him. This time it's a polo, and the buttons are, like, done down to, like, halfway down his chest.
Can I nominate the ham, mayonnaise, mint jelly, and apple crumble sandwich as a sandwich... as food of the 70s.
Stuff you'd only eat on, like,
70s film sets.
Psychedelics.
The kind of stuff you'd only come up with if you were, like, horribly drunk or horribly inebriated on some other drug. You think it's a good idea.
Maybe that's why this is Children of the Stones, is, like, all the kids in this show are just, like, whack job, like, stoned out of their mind, and all this is just, like, in their heads.
Maybe. Well, I've got nothing else to say.
I guess we'll find out in the subsequent and final 2 episodes of Children of the Stones.
If you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on that horrible sandwich. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. Next time, we're going to be watching Squaring the Circle. But until then, the end.